point of view, we are defining and specifying the context of equality and oneness within the walking of the agreement course, and we're going to assist and support with the perspective of equality and oneness in taking it through into the total context of how one will be walking equality and oneness within one's total process, because equality and oneness is the pillar of an as destiny in what we're walking within existence as a whole, as ourselves, and within walking it as ourselves to establish and manifest that equality and oneness for and as existence as a whole, as ourselves. So because of its dare I say importance, we will take you through in giving you context of what destiny as Destonians are in fact walking, and what you'll be a part of in walking this agreement course. So, equality and oneness. Now, at the moment in this existence, it is most obvious that there exists no equality and oneness, meaning there is nowhere within ourselves towards another human being or this existence as a whole where we can in fact say that we recognize a part of ourselves within another human being, within nature, within earth, within existence, even within ourselves, within the very proven point where if one simply observes the nature of one's thoughts towards oneself, towards this world, towards other human beings, it is always tainted with conflict, with blame, with judgment, with comparison, with revenge, with jealousy. Yes, we have the now and then on occasion experience of connection, which we call love or happiness or enjoyment or excitement or appreciation. However, if one have a look at the dynamics of how one operates within one's mind, we always function within polarities inside ourselves towards the world, towards other human beings, where our participation within ourselves, the world, other human beings is never constant and consistent. It is ever changing in how we will experience ourselves one day like this, one day like that, how we will experience other human beings one day like this, one day like that, how we'll experience ourselves in the world one day like this, one day like that. It is a constant, continual inner conflict that has manifested in the relationship with ourselves, other human beings, and the world as a whole. And it is that internal conflict that is the representation of the separation that we have accepted and allowed from ourselves, from the world, and other human beings. And when I say world, I mean also the earth, existence, nature, the animal kingdom. So, within that, what has had dominion over ourselves and our relationship towards ourselves as existence has been separation. And that separation is indicative within ourselves in how we would, for example, talk to ourselves about ourselves, in the extent to which we've separated ourselves inside ourselves, that we can talk to ourselves inside ourselves, in diminishing, limiting, compromising, and creating this total idea and experience of ourselves within ourselves that has that nature of conflict in how it consists of and exists as comparison, judgment, helplessness, powerlessness, victimization, inferiority, in how we can diminish ourselves inside ourselves, and within that proving that we cannot even have an effective, constant, consistent relationship with even ourselves, in being able to live the question of whether you'd be able to live with yourself into and as eternity as you exist now, be able to continue existing within this self-experience of yourself eternally. And if one self-honestly have a look at the nature of one's thoughts, one's backchat, internal conversations, reactions, and just the exhaustion that is manifested and generated within maintaining a living within self and this world, one would say no. And this whole experience that we've manifested within ourselves has simply been because of and due to this point of separation, where we have separated ourselves from ourselves as individuals, as an actual self, walking and living and expressing here with the human physical body, and being equal to and one with other human beings, the world, the earth, existence as a whole, and actually having a conversation, an equal and one communication with a part of oneself, and in fact realizing and knowing that you are communing with a part of yourself, that that being, that manifestation is in fact you. And within this world and this existence, the one point that is spotlighted is oneness. But that oneness is a point that has become an experience as an idea. It has not become an actual, in fact, reality that is walked in being one with another human being, because we're not in fact even one with ourselves. And how this is illustrated is as follows. If one have a look within one's mind, you have your thoughts coming up within your conscious mind. Then you've got backchat and internal conversations which resonate and wherewith you communicate with yourself in various voices, in various sounds, in various ways. Then you've got your energies that you experience within your stomach region as reactions. And within that, you have multiple personalities, where with one person you are a certain way, another person another way. Even within environments, we have personalities, where in one environment you'll act and behave this way, in another environment you'll act and behave that way. This is illustrating that there are different separate parts within self that is directing and controlling one's interaction within and towards one's world and other human beings, proving that there is no oneness inside self, because nothing within self is functioning within the context of being one. Oneness as a here, where everything is one together and can within that oneness function, move, direct and express together equally. To have oneness, there must be equality. So what the oneness within this world and this existence is missing is equality. It's very easy to create an imagination of oneness and fantasize about an idea of what it could or would be to be one. But the actual practicality thereof can and never will be understood unless one is one with oneself, as bringing all the parts that one had separated oneself from inside oneself as the mind, which is the thoughts, the energies, the backchats, the internal conversations, and the personalities, here into and as and with self as individuality, and in that bringing self back to self, establishing self as one with self as all parts of self that self had separated itself from. And within that oneness, equality is here, because oneness and equality is where self has now stood as one with all of the parts that one had separated oneself to, and equal as, meaning where all parts as self now work, function, direct, and move together in being able to live directively in actual awareness of the totality of self within one's human physical body, where there's no more separate parts automatically directing you, meaning there's no more thoughts, reactions, backchats, internal conversations, personalities. You are constant, consistent here with your human physical body, breathing here, your movements, your interactions, your participations. You are absolutely aware of the detail of the totality of you in your human physical body. And you are the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. No matter what human being you meet, no matter where environment you find yourself in, you are the living realization of, I am here. And within that, your interaction, your participation, your living is what is best for all. This is the living manifestation of equality and oneness. In how one has walked oneself into the living manifestation of equality and oneness, you can then assist and support another human being, because one can then see where they're not equal to and one with themselves, because self has walked that process for self. So that is why equality and oneness do not yet exist in this world, in this existence, because it hasn't yet been walked for self as each individual. So the process of equality and oneness must first start within self, and that is becoming equal to and one with your mind. Why are we not yet equal to and one with our mind? One can see it within our thoughts, where our thoughts are at the moment automatically coming up, automatically moving into various directions, and we simply follow it and participate in it, and then it goes into daydreaming and imaginations. But we didn't in fact make a decision to look at that or experience that or think about that, or say to yourself, I would like to now think about this. Okay, let me now think about that. Okay, how would I like to think about that? How would I like this to move? We don't do that. The things just come up, and you can see it in your reactions as well when you meet people. It's just these voices that automatically emerge within self, which is indicating that we're not even standing equal to and one with our mind, because it's at the moment directing, controlling, and influencing our self-experience within ourselves. And so in terms of equality and oneness with one's mind is what you walk with writing, self-forgiveness, and self-corrective application, where what is equality and oneness with one's mind, consciousness system is the action of taking responsibility. The action of taking responsibility is where you make the statement to no more accept and allow separation, in abdicating responsibility to your creation as the mind, but to take responsibility, which is to take responsibility, which is to take your creation and within the taking of your creation as your responsibility, you immediately within that manifest an equality and a oneness, because you're saying that this is me. And within that, obviously, the current equality and oneness is not yet standing within the context of what's best for all as a starting point. The starting point is still interest, meaning, let's say, for example, you're walking a personality of or let's take a more simpler point. Let's say you're walking a reaction of getting irritated when someone asks you for help. Now, the taking of responsibility as the taking of your creation and standing equal to and one with it is taking that reaction of irritation and walking it as self in seeing, understanding, and realizing how self had created that creation of irritation that came up within self. So now you're equal to and one with your creation as irritation. Obviously, that equality oneness is still interest, because it is self that is experiencing that reaction of irritation and separating you from another human being and an environment. And within that of taking responsibility, taking your creation in investigating, seeing, realizing, and understanding how it is that self had created that creation as self, that is done through the practical action of writing. Through your writing, one can write out and see who one is as this creation of self as irritation. Now you're practically walking, becoming equal to and one with irritation as your creation, and practically walking the taking of responsibility. This is not a miraculous process that happened instantaneously or suddenly or unexpectedly. This is a process that you're going to walk with awareness. So through writing, you are practically walking the establishing of yourself with your creation and the practical taking of responsibility as your creation in standing equal to and one with it, which means to get to know it as yourself, which is what you do through writing. Your self-forgiveness in walking your self-forgiveness process is the practical walking, the realization of understanding, seeing how it is and what it is that self had separated self from, through accepting and allowing the creation of irritation. Meaning, with self-forgiveness, you are now establishing self-equality in oneness, where you're now busy taking that creation of irritation and opening it up and walking it with self as self, in seeing what self had separated self from that is within the irritation. Because the irritation has been a creation that self had created within self, that had become a separate point but still a part of self. So what is required to be seen is, what does that irritation represent that self had created in separation of self? What is that part of self that self is not yet standing equal to and one with? And as you're walking your self-forgiveness, you're seeing, realizing, understanding that the part of you that you've separated yourself from as a self, as an individual, as individuality, that part through irritation that you've walked and you've opened up the construct and the manifestation, you see, realize, and understand that you have separated you from a part of yourself as irritation, which was all this time you not seeing or accepting yourself capable of doing something, of getting something done, of completing a task or a project, or completing something new that you'd have to learn how to do, but you didn't have that confidence in yourself to get it done. And therefore, instead of accepting that part of you as having that confidence, as being able to get something done through simply getting to know how to do it, and trusting yourself that in learning how to do something, you'll get it done, one accepted and allowed oneself to go into reaction of irritation, and within that irritation, as separate creation of self, separate self from self in that ability, in that confidence, in that trust to get something done, and thus utilize the irritation to separate self from a task, from a project, from getting something done, and then instead turned away from it instead of facing self within and as it. And so with self-forgiveness, one then see what it is of one's creation that one separated itself from. And that's when the self, the individuality that is here that we've separated ourselves from, start opening up, where we start seeing self. And through self-forgiveness, we move into self-corrective application, which is now the living application, the living change from separation into self-equality and oneness, where we now, from walking the writing, the self-forgiveness, we take it into self-corrective application. And now when we and as we face the irritation, we realize, oh no, this is accepting and allowing self-separation. I'm creating separation here within myself because of me not wanting to accept or realize or become a part of me. And therefore I breathe, I stop the creation of irritation as separation from me, and I move myself to get this project and this task done, to walk through learning how to do it, and within that build and establish self as trust and confidence and actual doing, and not perpetuate self-separation through participating in irritation. And that is the practical process of how we're walking equality and oneness with self as the mind in everything that it consists of and exists as, from the thoughts, the internal conversations, the backchats, the personalities, the constructs, the systems, the networks, the energies, the emotions, the feelings, the resonances, your conscious, subconscious, unconscious, physical mind. Everything represent a part of ourselves, the self, the individuality of here, of equality and oneness with the physical, with and as everything and everyone represents that part or a part that we've separated ourselves from. So it's like walking, writing, self-forgiveness and self-corrective application is like taking parts of yourself as your mind and having a look at what is this creation as me, representing of me that I have separated myself from. And to be able to walk that question for self and actually establish equality and oneness again with self, and bringing all these parts back to self, into self, and walking one's living of self, equality and oneness, is taking the individual parts, which is taking your creation, which is taking responsibility, which is your first step of establishing equality and oneness in the realization that this is a part of me. And within that realization, as this is a part of me, and taking responsibility and taking your creation, you write. You write to get to know yourself in the detail of how you have created you as this creation, so that in that realization you can change from creating separation to manifesting equality and oneness with self. Then the self-forgiveness, where one in fact sees self, the self that was within that creation that self had separated itself from. When you find and see that part of yourself, one do the self-corrective application and walk yourself back into yourself practically, physically, in reality. And this is the practical process of self-equality and oneness first. And one will realize, as one walks with other human beings, what one has stood equal to and one with oneself, in walking as one's mind and with one's mind and through one's mind back into self, as one bring all one's parts back together again into self and actual living, one will be able to see, realize, and understand how one's living naturally change to assisting and supporting other human beings as self. In fact, it will become natural, because this equality and oneness is so real that it simply becomes a natural part of oneself and one's living, to communicate with other human beings, to get to know them, to see who they are, why they are, and how they are, and accordingly assist and support them within themselves and their lives, because one have an in fact real understanding of what it is that they're experiencing as you. But within that point we'll get to much later. For now, what is important is to understand this equality and oneness. And this is the equality and oneness that self will be walking for self and or with another human being. And this is individuals. You as an individual walk this for yourself, and you'll realize that another human being cannot walk this for you. Only you know your mind. It is you. And therefore, within agreement, what is agreement is two individuals walking this process of self-equality and oneness together. Yes, you can share your processes, reflect or mirror each other in terms of discussing points, opening up points to get another perspective, because sometimes we're kind of stuck in a box and we can't get outside of the box to see what it is that we're doing. And within that, expand our insights and perspectives and understandings of ourselves, but still the main focus remains self-equality and oneness. So you're making more practical the realization and understanding of what agreement really is. And it's two human beings walking their self-agreement together, which then manifest the agreement in terms of two human beings making that self-agreement and assisting and supporting themselves and each other, but always self first. And that is the manifestation of what we refer to as agreement. However, it is simply 1 + 1 in walking together. That's the agreement, is the 1 + 1, but it's still individual plus individual. It's not the agreement forming any manifestation of a separate entity. It's two human beings making sure that everything is brought back to self in manifesting self-equality and oneness, to become a living example of living equality and oneness with self. Alright, thank you very much.